My husband was on one knee, proposing when his obsessed best friend sprinted across the garden, yanked me backwards by my ponytail, and screamed that the proposal didn't count without her permission. I heard her before I saw her. A scream cutting across the garden, high and ragged, not a name so much as a sound, something animal underneath it. Marcus was on one knee in front of me. The ring box was open. The stone caught the string lights hanging from the pergola and sent a little scatter of light across the tablecloth. My hands were shaking. His eyes were wet. He was halfway through his speech. Something about the morning I left my coffee on his car roof and drove halfway to work before he called me laughing, and how he knew right then. I had started crying at the coffee part. Then the sound came again, closer. I turned my head just enough to see her sprinting across the garden path, heels abandoned somewhere behind her, dress hitched up in one fist. Her face was wrong in a way that I couldn't process quickly enough. Not angry, not drunk. Something past both of those things. Marcus. Her voice went up at the end like a demand, not a name. He looked up from the ring. His expression moved through three things in 1 second. Confusion, recognition, dread. Vanessa, what? She didn't let him finish. She grabbed his shoulder, hard, the way you grab someone to stop them from walking into traffic. He brushed her hand away without standing up, kept looking at me, kept trying to hold the moment together. She grabbed my ponytail. One hard yank, backwards and down. I stumbled. My knees buckled. The string lights blurred above me. Marcus caught my arm before I hit the stone. I was on my feet and shaking, and Vanessa was already screaming. Not at me, at him, like I wasn't even a factor. You can't do this. You can't just do this without talking to me first. This is not how this goes. Both families came through the doors. His mother, my sister, his uncle with a napkin still in his hand. It took 3 people and a member of the restaurant's security staff to walk Vanessa out of the garden. She went screaming, not sobbing, screaming. Her last words before they got her through the gate were directed at no one in particular, or maybe at all of us, or maybe at the night itself. The proposal doesn't count. I didn't approve it. Marcus proposed again inside, in a booth with his family crowded around us and my sister filming from too close. I said yes. My hands were still shaking. His were too. That night, driving home, neither of us said her name. We didn't have to. I need to go back a few years to explain how we got there, because nothing about that night was an accident, and I think I knew that even before I fully understood it. I was 28 when Marcus and I met. He was 30. We both worked in project management at a mid-sized logistics firm in Columbus, Ohio. Different departments, same floor, same bad coffee machine in the break room. We started talking because I left my lunch in the wrong section of the communal fridge, and he found it, read my name off the container, and walked it down the hall to my desk. He had this way of being embarrassed about ordinary things that I found immediately disarming. He apologized for looking at my name. I told him that was the correct behavior from a person who finds a stranger's lunch. We got coffee that Friday. 3 months in, we were serious enough that he wanted to introduce me to the people in his life. His mother and his younger sister first, then his college friends. Then, finally, on a Sunday afternoon at a brunch spot in the Short North neighborhood, Vanessa. She was already at the table when we arrived. She stood up when she saw Marcus and hugged him the way you hug someone after a long absence, even though I later found out she had seen him 4 days earlier. Then she turned to me, and she smiled the smile of someone who has already made their decision. She's cute, she said to Marcus. Not to me, to him. Like I was an object he'd brought to show her. That was the first thing she ever said about me. She spent the first 20 minutes of brunch talking about his ex-girlfriend, Claire, then his ex-girlfriend before Claire, Britt, then the one before that, Maya. For each one, she had an explanation. Claire had been too emotionally unavailable. Britt had been too dependent. Maya had wanted things to move too fast. She told each story like she was delivering a lesson, looking at me occasionally with the expression of a person who has been through all of this before and is simply being patient. Marcus needs someone who understands that his friendships are a priority, she said at one point, cutting into her eggs Benedict. Some girls see that as a threat. The ones worth keeping don't. Marcus laughed it off. He put his hand over mine under the table. He said, Vanessa is just protective. She's been like this since high school. He said it like it was a charming quirk, like she was an eccentric aunt who said inappropriate things at holidays, like it was something you accommodated rather than something you paid attention to. They had been friends for 15 years by then. She knew things about him that I didn't. She knew the story of every scar, and the year his father missed his graduation, and the 3 weeks he spent at his cousin's place in Arizona after a bad breakup in his mid-20s. She had been the constant. I understood that. I even respected it. What I didn't understand yet was that Vanessa had no interest in coexisting. She had an interest in remaining primary, and the two things are not the same. The pattern established itself quietly at first, the way mold does. You don't see it all at once. You just notice, one day, that it has been there for a while. She texted him constantly, not just when something happened, throughout the day, for no reason, in a rhythm that felt more like surveillance than friendship. Marcus would check his phone at dinner and I would see her name. I would see it again 20 minutes later. If he didn't respond within a couple of hours, she would send a follow-up. If the follow-up got no answer, she called. The emergency was always minor, a dress she couldn't choose between, a coworker she was frustrated with. Once, genuinely, a spider she needed him to talk her through catching and releasing through her bathroom window while she was on the phone with him for 11 minutes. I know it was 11 minutes because he was still on the call when our food arrived at the restaurant where we were trying to have dinner. The coincidences started after we passed the 6-month mark. We went to a Thai place in Clintonville on a Friday night night, and she walked in 20 minutes after us with a friend, saw Marcus across the room, and came straight to our table. They talked for 35 minutes. Her friend stood next to the table like a support beam. I finished my green curry alone. Marcus said it was a coincidence. Columbus is small, he said. The Thai place is popular, he said. 2 weeks later, same thing at a movie theater. Then at the bowling alley where a co-worker of mine was having a birthday party that Marcus had only known about for 48 hours. The bowling alley one stopped me cold. I didn't say anything that night, but I started paying attention in a different way. When Marcus and I found an apartment together and signed the lease in November of that year, I thought, this will recalibrate things. Moving in together has a weight to it. It announces a priority. I believed, genuinely, that some part of the situation would naturally settle. Instead, Vanessa showed up at our door 8 days after we moved in with a housewarming gift. It was a houseplant and a bottle of bourbon, both addressed to Marcus. There was no card that included my name. She spent the next 3 hours rearranging his side of the closet while I unpacked the kitchen. She had opinions about where his shoes should go. She had strong opinions about which section of the closet got more natural light. She referred to the spare room as Marcus's office, even though we had agreed it was a shared workspace. Then she made herself at home in the living room. She was still there at 9 p.m., and then at 10. At some point, she and Marcus ended up on the couch watching something on his laptop, and I came out of the bedroom to find her feet in his lap, the way a person puts their feet in the lap of someone they've been sleeping next to for years. I said something. I kept it calm. I said it was getting late. She looked at me with very deliberate patience and said, real couples don't need to sit together all the time. It's actually a sign of a healthy dynamic when you can each have your own space. Then she turned back to the laptop. I went back to the bedroom. I lay in the dark for 40 minutes. I wanted to be the person who had the mature reaction. I wanted to identify this as a minor irritant, something to address calmly with Marcus in the morning, nothing to let spiral into something bigger. But here is what I thought about, lying there in the dark. 15 years of this, whatever this was, and Marcus had never once, in 15 years, drawn a line. By December, Sunday breakfast at our apartment had become Vanessa's standing tradition. She arrived around 10 and left when she felt like leaving. She cooked in my kitchen with the ease of someone who had always cooked there. She left the mess on the counter. She and Marcus sat at the small dining table I had bought and talked and laughed at the things they always laughed at, the references and callbacks and shorthand of 15 years, and I sat at the same table and understood about 30% of what they were saying and smiled at the right moments and felt, consistently, like a guest in my own home. When I finally said something to Marcus, quietly, privately, the right way, he looked genuinely surprised. He said he'd never thought about it that way. He promised he would say something. He didn't. I want to be careful here about how I tell this next part, because I have told this story to friends, and at a certain point people start asking why I didn't leave, why I kept showing up, why I said yes when he eventually asked me. I don't think that's the right question. I think the right question is, how do you leave someone who, in every other context, is the person you chose? Marcus was kind. Marcus was funny in a way that caught me off guard, not performing for a room, but genuinely noticing things that were actually funny. He brought me soup when I was sick. He remembered the names of my cousins after hearing them once. He fought for our relationship in every arena except this one, and I loved him enough to believe that the exception would eventually close. The escalation, when it really started, had a clear beginning. Marcus told Vanessa he was planning to propose. He told me later he had told her because she was his best friend and he was excited, and it hadn't occurred to him not to. I believe him. That's the saddest part. From the day he told her until the night of the proposal, Vanessa's behavior sharpened in ways that were impossible to overlook. She started touching him more in public, not inappropriately. It was more granular than that. A hand on his arm, a head on his shoulder in a group photo, the way she leaned into him in conversations, specifically when I was present. The contact was calibrated to send a message without being visible enough to name. She changed his contact name in her phone to my person. I know because she left her phone face up on our coffee table on one of the Sunday mornings, and it lit up with a notification, and I saw it. When I mentioned it to Marcus, he shrugged. That's just Vanessa, he said. That phrase. That was the answer to so many things. That was how 15 years of behavior had survived this long without examination. That's just Vanessa. As if Vanessa were a weather pattern you accepted rather than a person making choices. She started calling him more, sometimes twice in an evening. She manufactured crises. Her apartment had a weird smell and she was worried about a gas leak. Could he come check? He went. The smell was the candle she had burned for 6 hours. I want to be specific about one incident that happened in the February before the proposal, because it is the thing that, in retrospect, told me everything I needed to know. We went to a dinner party at the home of Marcus's college friend, a guy named Daniel, about 12 people. Vanessa was there. She arrived before us and had apparently already established herself at the center of the group, which was her usual posture. At some point in the evening, Daniel's wife, a woman named Priya, asked me about our relationship, when we had met, how long we had been together. Normal conversation. I said 2.5 years. Priya said we seemed solid. She said Marcus seemed really happy. Vanessa, from across the table, said he was happy before too. Not loud, not dramatic. Just dropped it into the conversation like a stone into still water. Nobody responded. The moment passed. But Priya looked at me with an expression that I recognized, the look of a woman who has just witnessed something she isn't sure how to categorize. I filed it away. I kept filing things away. I had a mental cabinet by that point, fat with incidents, each each one plausible in isolation and damning in aggregate. And then it was October. Marcus made a reservation at a garden restaurant called The Wren, known for its string lights and its pergola, and the fact that it was the place where we had our third date. Both our families were there, hidden inside the dining room, waiting for a signal. I was wearing the green dress I had bought specifically because Marcus once told me green was his favorite color on me. He was nervous. I could see the box-shaped outline in his jacket pocket. He got down on one knee. I started to cry. And then Vanessa came through the garden gate. What I didn't know until later was how she had found out. Marcus had told 2 people the location and time, his mother, who told no one, and Daniel, his old college friend, who had told his wife Priya. Priya had told her sister. Her sister was in a book club with a woman named Amber. Amber had been a friend of Vanessa's since college. The chain was that long. The chain was that fragile. But information has a way of finding where it's most dangerous. Vanessa had not come to talk Marcus out of proposing. That's what I thought at first. That her intention had been to persuade, to reason, to remind him of something she believed he owed her. But pulling my hair wasn't persuasion. It wasn't even warning. It was panic made physical. It was someone who had run every move in the game they knew and found they had nothing left but force. I know this now because of Priya. She called me 3 weeks after the proposal. She had been thinking about it, she said. About that night at the dinner party. About Vanessa and the things she had been saying about Marcus for years. Not to him but to other people. In the language of someone who believes the story hasn't ended the way it was supposed to. She told Amber maybe 6 months ago that she and Marcus had a moment. Priya said. Not recently. Years ago. Before you. She said they'd almost been more than friends. That the timing had been wrong. That she was waiting for things to come back around. I let that sit. She's not delusional, Priya continued. She knows it didn't happen. But she's been telling herself a version where it almost did. And I think the proposal was the moment she understood it never would. It recontextualized everything. The dinner parties, the coincidences. The way she had combed through his ex-girlfriends with the efficiency of someone checking whether the competition was real. She hadn't been protecting their friendship. She had been managing an ongoing belief that she and Marcus were, at their core, endgame, and that the women he dated were intermissions. I had been an intermission that ran too long enough to close the production entirely. She hadn't approved the proposal because in her version of the story, Marcus choosing me permanently wasn't allowed to happen without her consent. 2 months after we got engaged, Vanessa announced her own engagement on social media. The man's name was Derek. They had been together for 4 months. The announcement was emphatic. Long caption, many photos, a specific note about how, when you know, you know. The whole thing had the quality of a rushed counter-argument. She scheduled her wedding for the same weekend as ours, not the same day, the day before. Close enough to absorb whatever attention was available. Marcus did not receive a traditional invitation. He received a card asking him to be her man of honor. He held the card for a long moment. Then he set it on the kitchen counter. He looked at it for another moment. Then he threw it in the trash without saying anything. We did not attend her wedding. We heard about it from my cousin Jade, who was working the venue that night as part of her catering job. According to Jade, Vanessa spent significant portions of her reception discussing Marcus, not obliquely, by name, to strangers, to the DJ in her toast. She gave a speech ostensibly about finding love, but which was structured, Jade said, almost entirely around what she called the friendships that form the foundation of who we are. She cried in a way that didn't match the occasion. She talked about someone she described as my best person at length. Derek left the reception by 10 p.m. They divorced 11 weeks after the wedding. I felt something when I heard that. Not satisfaction. Something closer to exhaustion. The specific exhaustion of watching a pattern you recognized play itself out in someone else's story, on someone else's timeline, with consequences that no longer touched yours. Our first anniversary was a Saturday in October. We had a reservation at the Wren again, the same garden restaurant, intentionally, because Marcus believed in returning to good places. We were going to have the dinner we almost had a year before. I was at the front door putting on my shoes when I heard the car. I didn't think anything of it. A car is a car. Then I heard the footstep on the porch, and then the doorbell. Vanessa was standing on the front porch with a gift box under her arm. She was wearing the same perfume she'd worn to our engagement party. The gift box had a bow. The card on it had Marcus's name on it, written in her handwriting, and only his name. I filled the doorway. I told her she needed to leave. My voice was quiet. I had decided a long time ago not to perform emotions in front of her. She didn't deserve the performance. She craned her neck past me and called for Marcus like I was furniture, like I was a wall she could simply talk through. Marcus, Marcus, I brought you something. He heard her. He came to the door. He looked between us, her face, my face, and I watched his eyes and waited. I had been waiting a year for this exact moment without knowing I was waiting for it. This was the test that none of the other moments had been. Not the garden, not the phone name, not the Sunday breakfasts. This, her on our porch, a year in, trying again. He looked at me first, then he looked at her. Vanessa, he said, you shouldn't have come. She started crying immediately. The crying was fast, on switch, no build-up, the kind of crying that arrives fully formed because it was always ready. She went through everything she had. His father not being there for graduation, the 3 a.m. hospital run when she had a panic attack in 2019, the summer at the beach house in 2018, the photos from that trip, the memories from that trip, the version of Marcus from that trip who she needed him to still be. Marcus stepped backward into the doorframe, toward me. She must have felt it, the shift in the gravity of him, because her tears tears stopped, not gradually. They stopped the way a tap stops when you close it. Her face went flat and careful. Rob was right, she said. Rob was an old mutual friend of theirs who had drifted away in the last couple of years. You're a stranger now. I asked Marcus to go inside. He hesitated. 1 beat, 2, and then he went. The second the door was half closed and it was just her and me, the whole performance fell off her like a coat she had shrugged out of. She was calm. She was cold. You stole him, she said. Not as an accusation, as a statement of recorded fact. I told her that what she had done at our engagement was assault, that it had been witnessed by every person we loved, that her understanding of what she was owed did not make it less than what it was. She laughed. It was a short, dismissive sound. It was hair-pulling. You're too sensitive. Marcus always dated girls who could take a joke. I looked at her. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I reached out and took the gift box from under her arm before she could react. I told her I would make sure Marcus got it. Then I stepped back, closed the door, and locked it. Through the side window, I watched her stand on the porch. She didn't move. She stood there for 2 full minutes, staring at the door like the physics of it might reverse, like doors could be wished open. Then she turned and walked to her car and left. Marcus was on the couch with his head in his hands. I set the gift box on the coffee table and pulled the wrapping paper off. He didn't look up until I was done. Inside was a framed photograph. Marcus and Vanessa at prom. He was 17, in an oversized tux, grinning the unguarded grin of someone who doesn't know yet what his life will look like. She was in a blue dress. She was looking at the camera. He was looking slightly off to the side, at something or someone out of frame. He picked up the frame, turned it over. Nothing was written on the back, just the photo. Delivered on our first anniversary. A decade and a half of history in a frame, placed on our doorstep on the day we were celebrating a year of being together. He set it face down on the coffee table. His phone lit up. A number we didn't recognize. He read the message. His face went white. He turned the screen toward me. The message was from Derek, her ex-husband. 4 sentences. He said he had been trying to decide for months whether to reach out. He said he thought we had a right to know. He said that in the months before the proposal, Vanessa had spent money, a specific amount, $240, hiring a service to track public location data from Marcus's phone's social check-ins, that she had known about the restaurant, that she had been there before Marcus and I arrived and had waited in her car until he got down on one knee. She hadn't stumbled onto the moment. She had engineered being there for it. Marcus set the phone down. He looked at the overturned frame. He didn't speak for a while. I didn't either. There are things that don't need to be said aloud to be understood completely. In the weeks after that night, consequences arrived in the ordinary, quiet way that real consequences do. Not dramatically, but persistently. Marcus called Derek. The conversation lasted over an hour. Derek, it turned out, had a lot of things he had been holding for a while. Not just about the proposal, but about the months of their marriage. About the name that kept appearing in conversations that had nothing to do with it. About the speech at the reception, and the night Derek had driven home from his own wedding alone because the woman he married had spent the evening mourning a friendship that had never been just a friendship, at least not from her side. She told me she was over it, Derek said, according to Marcus. She told me Marcus was just a friend, that people who didn't understand the friendship were being insecure. I spent 10 months being told I was insecure for having a feeling that turned out to be completely correct. Marcus listened to all of it. He thanked Derek. He apologized to Derek. He said he hadn't known, and he hadn't. I believe that entirely. Some people spend years inside a dynamic and never see it from the outside. Marcus had been inside the dynamic of Vanessa for 15 years, and 15 years makes a thing invisible. He filed a police report about the hair pulling, the proposal night assault. He had put it off. He didn't want the confrontation, didn't want it to become a legal event, hoped it would just become something they moved past. But after the anniversary, after Derek's message, after the photograph, he understood that deferring wasn't the same as resolving. The report didn't lead anywhere formal, but it became a record, and records matter. His mother, Helen, called me separately. She called on a Tuesday morning, which meant she had thought carefully about the timing. She told me she had watched the garden incident and had, in the moment, tried to minimize it in her mind, told herself Vanessa was overwhelmed, that it would settle, that she didn't want it to become the thing it became. She said she wanted me to know she was sorry for minimizing it. She said the word clearly, sorry. She asked if there was anything she could do. I told her being honest with me about what she'd seen was enough. She had been the only one to try to calm Vanessa down that night before security arrived, and I had seen her get shoved away for the effort. She had paid a price for it too. Marcus's college friends, Daniel, Priya, a few others, mostly landed on our side once the full picture assembled itself. Some of them, it turned out, had their own stories from over the years. Small things. Vanessa's commentary on his relationships, the way she managed proximity to him. None of them had ever put it together into a single clear shape. That's how these things work. The whole only becomes visible when you finally look at all the pieces at once. Vanessa, for her part, went quiet. After the porch, after the door, she stopped contacting Marcus. Not for a week or a month entirely. I don't know if it was shame or strategy or simply exhaustion. I don't know whether she finally processed something or simply redirected. I don't think about it often. What I do think about is a quiet evening in late November of that year, a few weeks after everything had settled. Marcus and I were washing dishes together after dinner, which is one of those things you do when you live with someone that you never think to notice until you notice it. 2 people side by side in a kitchen, doing the small work of ordinary life. He washed, I dried. We weren't talking about anything in particular. He said, without looking up from the sink, think, I should have seen it sooner. I didn't tell him it was fine. It wasn't entirely fine. Some of it had been genuinely hard. What I told him was true, which is that I understood why he hadn't. 15 years is a long time to have a lens built for you. You don't always know when you're seeing through someone else's frame. He nodded. He passed me the last dish. I thought about the prom photo. Him at 17, grinning, looking off to the side at something out of frame. I thought about how long the story in her version of things had been running, how long she'd been waiting for the something out of frame to turn and look back. It hadn't. It never had. There are things I keep from that year. Not grudges, something quieter. An understanding of how a story can be running on a parallel track to your own without your knowledge. How someone can be narrating you, casting you as the obstacle in a plot you didn't know existed. Vanessa was not evil. She was not a villain assembled from a template. She was someone who had built a life around a person who had never chosen her in the way she needed him to, and who had never fully let herself know it. Every relationship he started was evidence against her theory. Every relationship that ended was evidence for it, until I didn't end. That is the grief of it, actually, not my grief, hers. I don't say that to forgive the ponytail or the porch or the prom photo on our anniversary. Some things you don't forgive. You just set them down somewhere and stop picking them up. I say it because after a while, the honest story requires you to see the whole of it, the full shape, not just what was done to you, but what drove it. Marcus and I are still at the Ren for our anniversaries. We went back the second year. We've been back every year since. The garden is the same. The string lights are the same. The table by the pergola, which they've started holding for us specifically, is the same. We get there early enough to watch the light change. He got down on one knee in that garden, ring box open, tears in his eyes. He was halfway through his speech. He got interrupted, and then he started over. That's the part I keep. Not the screaming, not the hair, not the desperate arithmetic of someone else's need. Him starting over. Getting back down on one knee, in the restaurant this time, in front of everyone we loved, who were still processing what had just happened and who were now watching something else entirely. His voice clear, the words the same as before, picking up exactly where he had left off. The proposal counted. It counted because he said it, because I said yes, because no one else's permission was ever required. We didn't need it then. We don't need it now.